What's going on, everybody? C4 here today, continuing with my NFL predictions with training camp and preseason right around the corner. Why not stick my neck out on the line and make some hot takes for every division in the NFL? We've done a lot of the NFC. We've done a lot, well, not a lot, the whole entirety of the AFC. So if I'm haven't talked about your team, you haven't seen it, I probably already have, so go search for it, go check that stuff out, and then come back to this video where we're going to be looking at the NFC West and breaking down some predictions here. We're going to rank all the teams 1 through 4, how they're going to finish on the season, as well as giving their ceilings or floors for the record, in case you feel like I'm shitting on your team. I'm going to try to be at least at 1 point optimistic and trying to see maybe how many wins they could get if things goes the right way, and then we'll be breaking down each individual team, giving some takes about how I feel their seasons are going to pan out. So starting in the NFC West with the 4th place team, it's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. I see them finishing 3-13 with a ceiling of 4-12. Just not a lot of talent here on the offensive side of the ball for them to really compete. Defensively, it's going to be intriguing with the names that they have and a lot of transition from a 3-4 to a 4-3. How things are going to work. It could be great. It could be an absolute shit show. Trust me, Niner fans, I know how it feels switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3. After we lost Chip Kelly, we had to do that, and we struggled a little bit. We had a lot of talent on the defense, but still that transition is not easy on everybody. Looking at the Niners, though, like I said, offensively, I just don't see enough there. Even with Kyle Shanahan, Mr. I cannot run the ball in the Super Bowl, coming in there, the offensive guru, I just don't see much more than, it kind of falls on the quarterback, and Hoyer's a manager, but there's no one else that he can manage. How can he manage an offense that's still not there, still missing a whole lot of pieces? I just don't think it's going to be a good scenario, but hopefully they get a quarterback. Looking forward to next year's draft. But looking at the Niners MVP for me, I think will be Carlos Hyde. There's a lot of people that are kind of, split down the middle on Carlos Hyde, whether or not he's going to succeed in this Kyle Shanahan scheme. I think he will. I think Carlos Hyde is much more of a Devontae Freeman style runner than people give him credit for because he's a little bit bigger, but I think the way that his style of running definitely is conducive to the way that Kyle Shanahan likes to run the ball. I know they have Joe Williams there, the rookie running back from Utah. I think maybe the 200 running back attack that they had in Atlanta with Freeman and Coleman. I think Joe Williams might be a guy whose name you should certainly keep an eye on. I know Tim Hightower is officially number 2 running back there, but I would not be surprised to see Joe Williams eventually eat into some of those carries. But in terms of offensive stat lines, I think Carlos Hyde will probably get close to the 1,000-yard mark. Will be over 1,000 total all-purpose yards, or all yards from scrimmage. That's what I'm looking for, receiving and rushing yards, and probably 6 or 7 touchdowns for what will be a not great offense, so he will have a stellar season, thus making him the MVP. Looking for bust, I'm just going with Vance McDonald because they paid him outrageous. What, $30-some million? He's not gonna. If you're paying a tight end $30 million, you better be getting minimum top 10 performance. I don't think he's a top 10 tight end. So there's no way he's going to be able to put up a stat line, especially with this offense, that's going to be relative to his contract, that's going to make him worth the money. So by that standard there, I'm going to have to list him as a bust. Sleeper, I'm going with Jimmy Ward, converting from corner to safety. I think that's a great move. I think he's a more natural safety. I think back there with Eric Reed, that's going to be a nice little tandem. They have something they can certainly build upon. John Lynch knows the value of having 2 good safeties. I think Jimmy Ward will have a very decent stat line here, so he's my sleeper. Looking at the 2 first-round picks, Solomon Thomas, I think around 5 sacks. Like I said, it's a lot of transition. A lot of those guys there that were drafted to play in a 3-4 scheme are now playing 4-3. I think Solomon Thomas definitely will be a day 1 starter, but it is going to be tough for him to get sacks on that defensive line, just because I think he's not going to have a whole lot of perceived double teams for other guys to eat up so that he can get one-on-one matchups. I think a lot of people there, man, everyone's learning. Everyone's learning. It's not like you have bona fide 4-3 proven players. You have to work around that. So I think 5 sacks is a good starting point for a guy that has a lot of upside. And then looking at Reuben Foster, I'm going to say about 50 tackles, a sack, and a pick. He's currently listing as death behind Malcolm Smith, but I think it's going to be sooner than later. Maybe an injury to Ahmad Brooks or something like that. We'll see Reuben Foster get on the field. Then again, he does have some injuries coming from the draft. So I don't know necessarily if he's going to be 100%. I think he will be. Everything I've seen has said that he'll be ready to go. So it may be a couple weeks before he officially becomes a starter. Maybe he has to wait for an injury to happen. But I think sooner than later, Reuben Foster will get on the field and make some good plays for the Niners this year. Maybe not as many as people are thinking, but the future is bright here with some of these defensive prospects. If all in all, if this 49ers defense can this year make the transition to a 4-3, and then next year can be through free agency and the draft all out on offense, I think things are looking bright for the 49ers. Just this year will not be the year. Go to number 3 in the NFC West. I'm going with the LA Rams with a 5-11 record. I see their floor as a 4-12. Kind of comes down to the fact that I'm not really a big believer in Jared Goff. Looking at the Rams, Their MVP for me will be Aaron Donald. Once again, I know they're making a slightly different scheme change. Going from, I don't think Wade Phillips runs an all 3-4. It's definitely a 3-4 scheme, but I think he has like multiple fronts and stuff like that, likes to mix things up, so it's not a pure base. That's what I've read anyways. I'm not as up on the Denver Broncos their last couple years to really comment on Wade Phillips, but I remember when he was with Dallas, I'm pretty sure they ran a couple multiple fronts, but we're always just still a base 3-4. But regardless, there is a chance, with this change in scheme that Aaron Donald may struggle. I don't think so. I think he is the best defensive tackle in football today, and I think he will make that transition. And Wade Phillips being one of the better DCs, he's definitely going to find a way for Aaron Donald to get after the quarterback and make some plays. So once again, how many years is that? Like 2-3 years in a row that Aaron Donald's the MVP of this defense. For bust, I'm going with Jared Goff, and it's going to be relative. I just think, obviously it's easy for me to say because I'm an Eagles fan saying that Wentz, who had a decent season last year, is going to toe all together. I'm going with Goff, who did not look good last year. I'm going to say that he just doesn't look that good this year. Still, not enough to say, oh, this guy is an absolute bust. I think there's still not a complete enough offense for the Rams right now for him to say that, you can still come out and say there's not enough weapons for Goff to succeed this year. But I think this year is going to really make it so year 3 is a make or break season, which, it should be. 3 years in, you got a guy that's the first overall quarterback. He should be starting to make plays, but I just don't see him really lighting the league on fire, being able to carry the Rams to too many wins here this season. Obviously, I only gave them 5, and that's predominantly because of their defense. But like I said, it's relative. I don't think Goff is going to be horrendous. I just don't think he's going to be anything special this season. I can see Goff having a very similar stat line to what Carson Wentz had last year with the Eagles, which maybe be enough for Goff to maybe he'll finish strong at the end of the season, so that people are optimistic that all right, here we go, big year 3 for Goff. Finally, hopefully we added another wide receiver or continue to build the offensive line going into the 2018 season. But I think for the 2017 season, Goff is not going to be enough for the Rams to really get much more than 5 wins. Looking for sleeper, I'm going with Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver. They have Tavon Austin, who's a gimmicky type player, not really an all-out wide receiver. You got Robert Woods, who's coming in. I think that's a good addition. But outside of that, someone else has to make some plays. And with Gerald Everett, I don't know if they're going to use him as a tight end. I really think they should probably convert him to a wide receiver. I think Cooper Kupp is looking like the safest option to kind of step out from this class of rookies that are coming in to try to improve this offense. I think Cooper Kupp has the highest probability of doing that. Really good hands, really good route running. Didn't really test well at the combine. Had kind of a shit 40 that really hurt his draft stock a bit. But I think Cooper Kupp, when all is said and done, will emerge as the wide receiver 2 there, probably statistically. I think you have to probably give Robert Woods the nod to lead in a lot of the major receiving categories. But I think Cooper Kupp is certainly going to give him a run for their money, thus making him my sleeper. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the Rams. Strengths, I'm saying the front 7, and the only glaring weakness I see right now is the right tackle spot. But again, until proven otherwise, they have obviously Andrew Whitworth, kind of bring him in on a mercenary contract to play left tackle as a Band-Aid. The run game, man, you got to help out Todd Gurley. I think Todd Gurley is one of the most talented running backs in football. But until we see that offensive line in action, you have to almost say the run game is a weakness as well. And I guess I think I forgot the strengths and weaknesses of the Niners. The strengths for the Niners were their safeties, and the weaknesses were the wide receivers. Anyways, moving on to number 2, which is the Arizona Cardinals. Live finishing 8-8 with a high of 9-7. So they're definitely going to be a team I think is going to be a fringe for competing for that last wild card spot. Looking at the Cardinals, MVP for me is going to be David Johnson once again, one of the most complete, electrifying running backs in football. Personally, was my MVP last season. For bust, I'm going with the 3rd-round pick, wide receiver Chad Williams, just because the first 3 rounds, those are guys as rookies that you really want to make an impact, and I'm just really surprised. And this is actually a gamble, because a lot of people probably would have Chad Williams as a sleeper, because he's kind of an unknown, coming from Grambling State. I'm just going to say that it was one of those, what? A.J. Jenkins type pick, for those of you that knows who that is. So looking at the Cardinals, I'm going out on a limb and going with a risky bust because he's kind of a sleeper. But I'm going to say he's going to be a bust just because the 3rd-round draft pick is a wide receiver. Don't see him making more plays. Unless a major injury goes down, I think it's going to be J.J. Nelson, Larry Fitzgerald, and John Brown. For sleeper, I'm going Budda Baker, who's currently listed behind Honey Badger on the safety depth chart. I think he's too good to just be depth on this team that needs to get better in the secondary. I think what would be beneficial is move either him or Honey Badger into the nickel role to get him some starting snaps there. So I think, Budda Baker certainly is my sleeper to eventually get a starting role, see a lot of action on that defense. He plays, he's kind of undersized, but he plays a lot bigger than that. So I think there is room for him to make plays and increase his snap count as the season goes on. Looking at their 1st-round draft pick, Hassan Reddick. again, another guy kind of listed as depth right now. I think eventually he's too talented to keep off the field, but certainly now as he's classified as a linebacker, played a lot of defensive line at Temple, but played everywhere, and it wasn't until like the Senior Bowl that they tried to move him around a little bit, so maybe they won't throw him to the Wolves. So I'm going to say final for Hassan Riddick, probably 30 tackles. I'm going to say 3 sacks. 30 tackles, 3 sacks as a middle linebacker. Still working on being a coverage guy, but all in all, it's decent year from Hassan Riddick. I definitely think the upside is there. Look at the strengths of the Cardinals. I'm going to say the linebacking core, though. You got Hassan Riddick as a depth guy. You got Chandler Jones, Marcus Golden, Deion Buchanan, Carlos Dansby. Real good linebacking core if they can stay healthy. The weakness for me is cornerbacks not named Patrick Peterson. And I'm saying that as a weakness as just, you see this Cardinals team as a do or die this year. Look at them as a team that, especially with Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer, no one knows how many years they have left. This is pretty much it. They're all in. And when you look at their secondary, I do not see a team that's going to be able to stop the elite offenses of the football or even really compete with the elite offenses. I'm talking about the corners. Oh, no. Outside of Pat Pete, you still need 2 other corners that can make plays. And until they officially say they're moving Budda Baker or Honey Badger to a nickelback spot and they have them both listed as safeties, I see there being a massive gap there. And I don't see this secondary outside of Pat Pete being able to contain the likes of most of the teams in the NFC East. You have the Green Bay Packers. You have a lot of teams in the NFC South. I think a lot of those teams have good matchups against the Cardinals in that secondary. Going to number 1, it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks once again. I have them going with a 10-6 record with a ceiling of 11-5. With the Seahawks here, the MVP, obviously he's going to be Russell Wilson. He's, the fact that he's been able to survive behind that offensive line for so long. They got slightly better. I'm going to say that, slightly. But even a slightly better offensive line should be able to help him make a couple more plays a game, which will make him, the MVP of that offense. For bust, I'm going Eddie Lacy. I just didn't like this move to begin with. I've been saying for quite some time I think I would have went with C.J. Prosise and Thomas Rawls as my running back rather than bringing another mouth to feed in Eddie Lacy. I don't see Eddie Lacy really having much more upside than Thomas Rawls. I guess, with the Rawls Prosise, they have been banged up in the past. Maybe that's why they want to bring in an insurance policy in Eddie Lacy. But anytime you have to have a weight requirement on your running back, it just signifies like motivation and how much determination he wants to be a legit great running back. And anytime you have to I got to pay him so that he weighs an appropriate amount for an athlete of his caliber to handle what we want him to do, I just don't think that's a good look. For sleeper, I'm going Paul Richardson, Mr. Odell Beckham Jr. of the playoff stretch. I think he carries that over and carves out a role. Maybe he competes and bumps Jermaine Kearse for the other wide receiver there behind, obviously, Doug Baldwin. I think you'd probably consider Tyler Lockett as a staple of that offense now. I think I'm just going to gamble on Paul Richardson just to take the next leap. It's not going to be so much higher because he hasn't really done a whole lot. So if he can finish even with 500 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns, that's much better than what he's been able to really provide to that offense as of late. So he's going to be my sleeper to take a next step in his game. Look at the strength of the Seahawks. Obviously, it's going to be just the entirety of the defense. Not a lot of weaknesses anywhere that I could see as long as they stay healthy. For weakness, it's still the offensive line. Even Ethan Posich and Luke Jokel is not enough to fix one of the shittiest offensive lines in football, really the last decade or so. And I was still very surprised with all the second and third round draft picks. They only got one offensive lineman. It was absolutely ridiculous, especially with Dan Feeney was still there. One of the top guards. I'm pretty sure Forrest Lamp was still there. I mean, even if they're not ideal scheme fits, you can work with them. Tom Cable can work with them. It's probably better than half the basketball players you're trying to convert to play tackle. But I digress. Still, that defense and Russell Wilson is good enough to get the Seahawks the NFC West title once again. But that'll do it for me here today, guys. Thank you for watching. If you agree or disagree with anything you've seen here today, feel free to have a civil discussion in the comment section below. If this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.